Thank you, everyone, for coming to the talk. Thanks, ExpensiConX, for making me be here. Because 1 month ago, I didn't know about your company, so it's like a huge learning experience for me. And so I remember I do a lot of open source, and I chat with Mark from Margilo often, and he was like on Discord, like, do you want to come? Like, you can present super cool stuff and like enjoy a super cool week. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. And so I try to learn like as a company, what you guys do, and try to like get to know each and every one of you since I'm here. So maybe I already spoiled some parts of my talk to some of you because I already talked a lot. But yeah, let's get this going. So I'm Thibault, I'm French, if you didn't understand from my accent. I work as lead mobile engineer in a French scale-up. And this is a place where I've been allowed to do a lot of open source. And by saying a lot, it's not that I do it all the time when I'm working here, but it's like, if I want to do it or if I need to do it, I can do it. And so this is a philosophy that we've had because we've been using open source components from React Native and maintaining some for a long time now. And we know that it's useful because it allows me to talk with people from like all over open source, like from Software Mention, from like all these great companies, know that I'm willing to help them and to debug stuff and to do things. And now if I got an issue on anything, I can just like DM someone and be like super annoying and be like, can you help me fix this? Because they know that I'm willing to spend time doing open source. So that's what I'm doing. The goal of this talk is to help you understanding how React Native releases works, because they are a bit different than like just a normal React Native library. And by understanding, like allowing you to participate and have a real impact on like React Native. It's not that hard to like get your stuff merged into React Native, be part of a release and test stuff. And being an active member of the community is the first step that is gonna cost you a lot of time, but it's super worth it to me. One thing that I like to say is you shouldn't do open source because you're forced to. So only do it if you like it, because it can be really exhausting and it will like steal you some sleep. So let's start by understanding the workflow so it's really great that we have this talk just before, because let's start by looking at how Meta manages React Native GitHub's repo and understanding like the flow that tends to release. So at Meta, they don't use releases of React Native, they just use main, and they have so many tests that run on every commit, and they just don't care about releases. For a long time, they just have been using React Native from each commit directly, and they have their build, and everything is very simple for them. So for a long time, actually, React Native releases were only like done by community, by Mike Grabowski from Callstack, as an example, who's been doing release on his own. He's like, okay, let's say this is this commit. Like, I'm just gonna say, this is gonna be this release. He tests this, he tests it, and it goes to npm, and this is like how we got to use it, because for a long time it's been only a community-sponsored effort, and it's changed recently. So let's check what's happening. So this is like super complicated, but I didn't find a way to make it easier, so I'm just going to explain it, and if it doesn't work, sorry for this 2 minutes you're going to lose. So if you want to contribute to React Native, the workflow is a bit different than over repository, where on over repository, you would just make a branch and ask to do a pull request, and it would be merged, and you would be like, cool, my code's here. If you do that on Facebook, so you're going to have the commit on main, you have your fork, you're going to be like, okay, I want to make a pull request with this new commit. And actually what's going to happen is like, it will never be merged. It will get imported inside Meta's own internal infrastructure, and some bot is going to be like, okay, your commit is now here. I'm going to close your pull request, And so you kind of lose the link between everything, and your commit magically appears on main, and you're like, okay, I have no idea what has happened to my code, but it's going to appear somehow on main. And so this is why no pull request on React Native gets merged. They're all closed if you go check the tab. And so it's a bit weird. You gotta get used to it and understand. And also during this phase, it goes through all the meta internal tooling. So it's probably gonna break the internal CI, and you won't know what's happening. And if you don't have friends, it can take time to be processed. But that's how it works now. Releases on the other side, now they got pretty so there's a really good process that's entirely documented if you go to reactnative.dev in the docs. Like everything that I'm saying in this talk actually is public, and you can find it documented directly on React Native website. And so the process these days to release a new branch is at some point, we're gonna cut a new branch, tag it 071 stable, and start testing here. And if we need to make some fixes, we're gonna cherry pick stuff from main and make patch releases from here. And so all the code from a version is gonna be on a specific branch that's isolated from newer change. Let's talk about the release crew. So I'm part of the release crew, which is a team of, I'm not gonna say random people, but it's not a predetermined group, and it changes all the time. And the idea behind this is to get people responsible for being the middleman for everything. So it's like right now the roles are like 2 people from Meta, because if you have any issue with something that's internal, you're going to need to be able to ping people internally. And so there are 2 people from Meta that would be in the release crew, and 2 community members that are here like to represent some people that are not using React Native as Meta is, kind of like. So we have external contributors at these meetings and during this testing phase, because once again, like Meta doesn't use React Native the way we all do, and it's good to have like our point of view. And so these community members can be of companies of any size. So you see there's like Microsoft, Shopify, and my company were like a small scale-up in France, and I'm still part of this. And it could be actually like people from your company too. So like this is completely public and open, and it's just a matter of like showing that you're willing to do some work, to help, to contribute, and and someday you can be part of this, so that's pretty cool. And so the mission of this crew is not to fix issues, it's just to like communicate to everyone, hey, this needs to be fixed, and once it's fixed, like, okay, this got fixed, so we need to cherry pick it and everything. It's just about coordination, and it's not about like actually doing some work. And the second thing that we do is testing everything. So we have all this infrastructure, all the infrastructure is already doing some testing, but before every release of React Native, because we were very careful about not releasing stuff that's broken, we do manual testing on multiple laptops and everything. So releasing a new version of React Native, what does it take? So before like even it's released as a release candidate on GitHub, we're gonna create and open this issue. So right now it will be brought to 72 because 71 is already out. And so it's gonna be this public discussion on GitHub that's gonna be like, this is all the things that we want, and like a checklist of everything that we need to be able to start the release. So what I call green light is, for example, we want to make releases attractive so that people want to update. So we wait that everyone at Meta, so we're like, we're gonna cut a branch soon, so if you want some things to get shipped, like, do it fast. And so usually it's like, if you want, for example, the new TypeScript template, the flex gap support, stuff like this is like cool features that we want to get into releases. We will wait so that everyone is okay with the current state of the branch. And we will start cutting at this time. So on a particular commit, we're going to be like, okay, let's cut this new 0.72 stable or 0.71 stable in this example. And then we start doing local testing to make sure everything still works. So because testing is done on every commit, but once again, Meta doesn't use React Native the way we do. So we still do local testing. And so this is at the time where we cut the RC. And we're going to be like, okay, RC0 is out, please test it. So we try communicating this to as many people as they are willing to test, which is a small group of people, which I would love to get more people interested into doing. And I thought about that, and since you got an app that's open source, might be a good idea to plug both together and see that if it breaks on RCs. And so we go through this round of testing with all the early adopters, so people that are crazy like me and love doing stuff in RCs and beta and alphas. And this is a time where we cherry pick. We keep cherry picking, like some people didn't get that job done in time, and so we keep cherry picking stuff during the releases, so new feature can still get in during releases. And at some point, when no one complains anymore about bugs, usually it means just everyone's dead, but when no one says this isn't working, we set it to stable. So we publish a new version as stable, and we create this discussion: should we release 0.71.1 or 2 or whatever the current number is? And the only cherry picks that we're going to allow from this time are going to be fixes only, and no more features at that point, because we don't want to break more stuff. And this is, again, an open discussion. So if at any time, like there's a bug on the version of React Native that you're having, and the commit has already landed on main, but it's not in the version, you can always go to this discussion and ask for it to be merged. This is something that I feel like not enough people are doing and should be done. So like two things to remember from this slide is like, please test more, so help us. And don't hesitate to like ask for cherry pick commits. So I use this talk to tell a little story about something that happened during the last Android release. I mean, not the release, but the RC. So I don't know how much you've been impacted at Expensify, but by the look that I see here, so it seems that it got you too. So this story started Friday, November 4th. So always do stuff on Friday. and it's super early in the day, so it's 5 p.m. And and we're like, okay, this day is starting super great. Let's release the RC, and finally, like everything is green, and we're like, okay, super cool. So we can finally create the RC before the weekend. It's an RC, so it's not gonna like do any harm to anyone. And 1 hour later, we got the first issue that's open on React Native repo. That's like can't no longer build on Android, and it's like a full build trace. That's we're like, okay, and it starts spamming a lot, because a lot of people are starting to report this issue that they cannot longer build on Android, and we're like, that's weird, because we just released an RC, so it makes no sense, but still so many people are reporting it that we take it really seriously. But this isn't something that we like anticipated and that had happened before. So there's not like clear guidelines on what we should do. But the thing that I like to share is like you can see that in 2 hours, people from community already gave workaround that were usable by anyone. And if you were willing to go into the Gradle file of your project, you could already fix it. So 2 hours to fix a bug is like, I think, a great thing done by the community. And so the culprit, and the reason the reason that explains that everything was broken, even though we just released an RC and no one already updated to it, is that there's a line that has existed for a really long time inside all React Native projects. And so you remember everyone was here at the Gradle presentation. So it's like implementation. I want this library, whatever version number you have, I'm going to pick the highest. And this is important because at that time, so before we did the RC, you were on React Native 0.70. And so Android, when it's looking for this dependency, it's going to check on Maven, which is the equivalent of npm for the Java dependencies. And it's going to also look into your node modules. And because at that time, there was a very old version in Maven, but it was like 0.20 something. And inside your node module, it will always be higher. It wasn't an issue. It will always pick the version that's inside of your node modules. But what happened is 71, because of the new architecture of React Native, started having like really huge build times on Android. And so they were like, we need to change the way we build Android. And so we're gonna like pre-build a lot of stuff and ship it again to Maven. And so what happened is that even if you didn't change a single line of code in your project, the moment we published a new version to Maven, it will always result to that version. And so the big issue here is that like some people got their build failing without touching any line of code. So it's like it was, and so the scale of that is massive because it's like every Android project, React Native project on the planet. Like no one avoided it. So what happened at that time is we can't roll back because, that's spoiler. We can't roll back because Maven is somewhere where you can only push new version, but you can never remove them for like the safety, or you could, because if you could push a version, remove it, so people install it, remove it, and repush it with like bad code in it, and people will still install the same version. So you cannot do that. It's a read-only repository. And so we're like, we know that we cannot go back. So how do we move forward from there? And so so there was multiple possibilities. People could just all decide to go to github.com, find the issue, copy paste the line of code and fix the project. But it's like super annoying because everyone has to do something manually. And it's native code, and I know you all love native code, but it's like we need to do talks to explain to people all the time how it works. So maybe it's not simple. And so what we did at this point is like, okay, there's a fix that's possible. It's a weekend, and we're like, we have no idea how to fix it for everyone easily. So it's going to be a tough weekend. And at that time, so our solution was like, it's impacting everyone and all versions. So we cannot just release a new version because people on 74 or 75 won't be able to just update to latest 70 point something. So even if we want to release a new version, we don't need to release one version. We need to release like n version. Like how many versions do we want to release at that time? Because so we need to take into account how many people are using which versions and be like, okay, so we need to, can we still release this version? Like, do we still know how to build React Native like 4 years ago? Like, can we do that? And so at that time, it was really complicated. And after a lot of discussion, we decided to release a lot of versions. So we decided to patch up to 73, which was like 7 versions earlier. So like more than 2 years before. And so you need to know that React Native has this release policy now that's supposed to be only the 3 latest versions are covered by any bug. And if you're not on that, good luck. But this was such an extreme case, and we broke stuff that was working for everyone. So we thought that it would be just fair to fix it for everyone. And so we decided to release 7 new versions. And we did it before Monday. I mean, nearly before Monday. So this was like a long weekend, but people at that point still needed to bump their React Native version. So it's still something manual. You don't need to do anything inside your Gradle files, but you still need to update your version. So that's super annoying. And so luckily, because when you're Meta, you have some contacts. Somehow on Tuesday, Maven accepted to remove the artifacts manually. And so it fixed the bug for everyone. And so to avoid to republish a new version to this artifact, React Native was renamed to React Android from that point. And so now I'm going to talk about the philosophy of like how once it's released, how once it's released to npm, we update it at Brigad, so my company. So why we update all the time is we want to provide our user with the best user experience. And so to have that, we need a good product. And we never want to have the product come to us and be like, we want to do that, and tell them we can't because tech, and it's too hard. So we need a really strong tech. And in order to have like all the possibility on our sides, we decide to be up to date with everything all the time. So, I mean, there's like this huge cost for tech that needs to do this work all the time, but every time something is new and someone wants to use it, we can. And so this is important to like understand that you must not overdo it. You must not, for the sake of tech and upgrading tech, break the product. It's always like in this order. It's like UX for the most important, then product, then tech. And all our tech for like most of companies is like 99% open source and 1% that's closed source. So that's why we spend so much time doing so. And so our release, our update process is like do stuff as early as possible, because this is during the release time that people in open source will check issues and will be willing to communicate with you. And so if you detect a bug during the RC cycle, if you participate to that, it's going to get fixed. Like the release won't go through if there's a bug, and it will be fixed before the release. So the earlier we can detect all these issues, the better it is for us. And if we get this feedback, it's great. And when we update early, let's say I'm going to test RC0 as 71. And, well, it's going to allow me to detect all the issues that are going to come with all the other dependencies that I have on my project and anticipate all those. Because for a long time, a lot of dependencies that we all love, such as Reanimated, for example, had super complex build scripts that would break every time there was a new a new version of React Native. And now these great libraries try to do this ahead of time so that we don't have issues. But this is the phase where like all the libraries are like panicking and trying to fix their build steps. So if you're using some libraries where you know the maintainer is not very responsive, you're going to see that it breaks. You're going to be able to create an issue, maybe even create a pull request and contribute to upstream. So that's really cool. And yeah, that's our mindset behind that. So what's really important is, first, when you need to update React Native, you need to know this tool, which is called Upgrade Helper, which I'm going to demonstrate to you in a few seconds. You need to know your dependencies. And what I mean by that is like, it's not because a library is called React Native something that it's overly complicated. It can contain only JavaScript, and it's probably going to update just fine with any versions of React Native. You're going to have these libraries that have some native code, but don't do anything too shady. Like WebView, as an example, is fine. It never breaks with new versions of React Native. And you have all these super great library, but at the same time, they do stuff that's so much on the edge that can break sometime. And so, as an example, like Reanimated, MKV, and all these libraries, you need to be aware that these are the libraries that you need to be to watch for when you update, and these are the libraries that you're going to need to help and to contribute to. So yeah, we should help them. And so I'm going to go really fast over Upgrade Helper. Come here. So Upgrade Helper is a tool that's gonna ask you on what version you're currently on and what version you want to go, and it's gonna show you the diff of two freshly new initialized projects. So you like show me how to upgrade, and so there's gonna be some custom content at the top, but what's important is like it's going to show you everything that's different between a package design of a 070 app and a package design of a 071 app. And so this is great, but also it's super annoying because it's very noisy. Like there's often a lot of changes that you don't need to make. And so it's super important to, for every line of change that you're gonna see like in this website, to understand why this change has happened and if you're gonna be affected or not. And not just to apply the diff blindly because you're gonna break a lot of stuff. And so if we go very, very quickly, so for example, the package has changed a lot because now React Native ships with TypeScript by default, so you can see all the types and everything. But if you don't use TypeScript, these are not changed for you. So you can just ignore all these changes. I mean, apart from the version bump of React Native, of course. Okay, so you have like flow that's been removed, git inner file, but all this won't change your build. Let's see, app.js, for example, is the first file that loads when your app boots, so you don't need to change anything. You already changed this file completely, I hope. Gem file is just your dependency. And so you're gonna arrive in these great files that we love, that's like build.gradle. And so if you read the changelog for React Native 71, you're gonna see that they changed the way to build and read completely. So this is why this file on this version has so many changes, and you need to read them carefully and apply them carefully. So good luck. But that's, I mean, there's no better way to do it than understanding on each line what's happening. And it's going to be the same for a lot of things. And so there is a lot of changes on every React Native versions that go on these files, but there's been a huge effort from Facebook to start hiding as many of these files as they can inside React Native, so that the surface of what's inside the template gets smaller and smaller. And so this way you won't be scared anymore to update, because it's just going to be like, go to package.json and update the version number. And so while we're still in like the year where everything gets broken, the new architecture comes out and everything, there's a lot of changes in these files, but I feel like in 2024 this is going to be great and super simple. So you just need to survive until this. Good luck. And so if we scroll down, we're going to see a lot of files removed, because in 71 they removed all the C++ file from Android. So that's really cool. And you're going to see all the new updates inside the iOS code to remove all this surface and wrap your app inside. Let's show you. And I'm going to end on this file because it's way too much detail. So as an example, before you had all this code to initialize your iOS app, and now it's like you just put the name of your app, and it's just going to like have all this code inside React Native directly, and so you don't need to like care if it changes anymore. This was like a big overview on like everything that's happening. I can't go too deep into the details because it would take days, but I hope you have some questions, and I will be happy to answer them. Go for it.
How far away do you think we are from React Native 1.0?
I should have known this was coming, and I didn't anticipate for it. Great. I don't even know if it will be out one day. Like, the fact, why are you asking that question? Like, what's your motivation behind wanting 1.0 to be out?
Oh, I'm just curious. It seems like they're migrating everything to the new architecture, and like a lot of it was kind of started as beta, and now they're releasing it regularly and upgraded to the new architecture. Soon they're presumably going to rip out the old architecture and kind of standardize everything on the new thing. And I'm just curious if you were aware of like a place that they were going, where they were
So like the 1.0 has just like marketing potential. Like that's this is like what we could get from releasing such a version. I know that some people are advocating to like try to reach this goal, and some just don't care because they're like, we're gonna still break stuff from time to time, and it's like you're gonna end up at version like 10 or 12, or like every time if every time you release the React Native you need to break the major, it's gonna be the same. Regarding the new Arch stuff, I think that we can see that Meta has done like a huge effort to try to make stuff non-breaking. I mean, for users, not for library maintainers. But for the end users, the idea is just that you're gonna just change a flag and it's gonna be easy for you. So, like, what we need to understand is that they cannot do breaking changes because they have too much code. So we can feel pretty safe about what's working today that will still be working for a long time, even if it's class component, even if it's like stuff like this. But it's still going to move forward. And like the new architecture of React Native is just here to allow new possibilities, not like have performance improvements right now or stuff like this. It's just like, this is going to allow us to do so much more than it's like, it's super cool, but right now it's a bit painful. So we have this weekly meeting where there's like this release meeting where we let everyone know what's the current status is, what are the current blockers and everything. And so we don't start thinking about the new release as soon as we release stable. So let's say 72 as an example. So 71 has been released like 2 months ago, the stable one, and 72 branch still isn't cut. So we've been waiting for a lot of internal refactoring to land. And so we've been thinking about, we want to cut the branch, but like we have this long wait list, and it should actually have been decided by now. We should. So there was this huge pull request that was supposed to land into the React Native monorepo, and if you have a fork, you're going to be affected by that. Like, it's going to be painful. So they are actually changing React Native for it to be a real monorepo, and like, so it's going to move basically all the files inside of the folder. So if you have like a fork, it's going to be like a huge merge. So like a little bit of backstory on how I ended up here. It's just, so I got it here by luck, but by all shows. So it's not because you're showing goodwill that it's going to work, but you need to show goodwill and you need to be lucky at the same time. So I joined here because I installed the release really fast because I love to update, and it was broken. I mean, some stuff was broken, and I fixed it, and I sent a pull request, and they were like, okay, cool, do you want to help more? I was like, yeah, sure, count me in. And then you get invited and everything. And so open source is like this huge circle of friends that you're making, and that helps you work faster every day, even though you work less every day on your own project. Like, everything that you're going to do is going to be more efficient. So like, for my company, this is no brainer that I can spend time to like meet new people, to like share experiences and stuff, because all this learning experience that I have, I'm going to be able to share it internally, and I'm going to be able to use all these connections that I create to like go faster.